Hello, my name is Jerry Mullins-Beggs, and I'm a professor in the marketing department at Illinois State University. Because one of my areas of interest is ethical decision making, I was asked to create this module for you. This PowerPoint will help you go through the steps to create your own ethical decision making process. At this point, you should have already reviewed the ethical frameworks, and I highly suggest that you have a copy of this PowerPoint presentation to take notes on. So if you haven't done that, if you haven't printed a copy, I'd suggest that you stop now, print the copy, and come back to the video. The purpose of this PowerPoint presentation will be, one, to review the ethical frameworks. Then we'll discuss guidelines that you might want to use in your process. I'll show you an example of an ethical decision-making process and then help you get with some guidelines to creating your own. And then we'll discuss how you're going to be asked to apply that process to an assignment. So let's start with government requirements. This is usually considered a minimum moral standard, a really good place to start when you're making ethical decisions, but there are always examples of situations that would be deemed legal but not ethical, or vice versa. For example, in the Enron situation, upper-level management was telling lower-level workers to not sell their stock, that it would be good for the company if they would hold on to their stock, and hopefully that stock is going to be coming back up. They were very adamant that they hold on to the stock. At the same time, that upper level management, they were selling their stock. And at the time, that was not illegal. They've made some changes to the laws since then. But certainly, I think most of us would agree it's unethical to take advantage of their lack of knowledge, take advantage of their company loyalty, and tell them hang on to your stock when they were selling their stock. So there are some benefits to this one and some problems. Obviously, it avoids breaking the law. It may keep employees out of jail. It can reduce the chance of lawsuit, probably not eliminate it, because people can still sue a company even if a law was not broken. Some of the problems with this one is the law cannot keep up with technology, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with the pirating laws regarding DVDs, movies, television shows, music, and those laws have a really hard time keeping up with the technology. As I mentioned, you can be sued even if the company didn't break the law, and the company reputation can be really damaged even though no laws were broken. The media, people find out about certain things that happen, company reputation goes down the drain, no laws may have been broken. This says laws may differ by state or country, but to be honest, this should say laws do differ by state or country. Good Samaritan laws are different from state to state, and we all know that bribery is an accepted form of transaction in some countries and in other countries not. So government requirements, good place to start, probably not where you want to end for a good ethical decision-making process. The next one is the utilitarian approach, and a lot of you have probably heard of this one. It's one of the most commonly referenced. It does people like it because it almost seems mathematical to them. Let's just calculate how many people benefited, how many people were harmed, and then we'll know what the right answer is. And obviously the benefit to that is the more people benefit than are harmed. However, how do you calculate those losses? What's a life worth? What's an injury worth? You may be surprised to know that there are actually people out there whose job it is to calculate what the life value of a 35-year-old lawyer is. How much more money would that person make? One of the disadvantages to this one, though, is that people really don't like when you put a value on someone's life. In the 9/11 aftermath, people came in and said, okay, we have a 35-year-old lawyer, and his worth was a lot more because of earning potential. His worth was a lot more than the 35-year-old janitor, who also left a wife and 3 kids behind, and we don't really feel comfortable with that. So what's the loss of a job? What's a life? You lose your arm in a factory accident. What is the worth of that? And so we're a little uncomfortable with that, and maybe not. That's not a perfect science. The other problem is it always disadvantages the minority. Greatest number for the greatest good for the greatest number means that the fewest number of people may be at a disadvantage, and many times those are the ones that need the most protection. Universal duties. This is Immanuel Kant, which you don't need to know, but it's also called the categorical imperative. I really like this one because many people rationalize that the reason it's okay for them to do something wrong is because it's just them. It's just this one time. I'm taking money just this one time. Nobody will notice it. I'm breaking the law just this one time. This law basically, or this framework basically says it's only okay for you to do it if it's okay for everyone to do it. And we think of some examples of that. Think about if everyone stole from the company, small amounts of money, equipment. They all lied on their reimbursement forms. If everyone did it, if only one person does it, yes, maybe the company can handle that. If everyone does it, you can see how that might become a real problem. I like it because it makes people think about the bigger picture. It makes them think about what would happen if everyone engaged in the activity that they're wanting to engage in. Some people, though, can justify any activity and say, well, it's fine for everyone to do it. The company owes them that, etc. So this was a pretty good one. Not a lot of problems with universal duties. Market forces. This is the idea of the invisible hand in Adam Smith. And the theory here is that businesses will act in their own best interest for the long run. They'll avoid bad behavior because they don't want lawsuits, they don't want negative brand image, they don't want potential loss of sales. And the benefits to that is that businesses get to govern their own actions. We don't have as many, under this one we wouldn't have as many laws. We would assume that businesses would do the right thing. We hope that when businesses are punished, it sends a message to other businesses not to act in similar ways. And when I say punished, punished by the law, punished by customers, punished by the media for acting in a bad way. The problem is that employees make decisions, not corporations. And any individual employee may not be particularly concerned about the long-term health of a business. And of course, no one ever thinks they will get caught. After Enron, WorldCom, all of those ethical scandals in the early 2000s, a lot of laws were changed. You would think market forces theory would say that people would quit doing that. We continue to have ethical scandals every year around the clock. Distributive justice. This is probably the most close to world religions in the idea that you have a responsibility to take no action against someone who is less than you. And when I say less than you, I don't just mean like a child. Less in power, intelligence, strength, money, position. Anybody who is lesser than you, you should not take advantage of them. Matter of fact, you should protect them. You have an obligation to protect them. I like this one because it holds people in power positions responsible for not harming or taking advantage of people below them. But the problem with this one is, who is that? What age would that be? Is 18 years old and younger the least among us? 21 years and younger? 25? Many years ago, women might have considered to be the least among us. And personally, I find that offensive now to think that I need to be protected because I'm a woman. Disabled people, how do we handle that? And also, what happens when the ethical dilemma is between two least among us, two 10-year-olds, two mentally challenged or disabled people? How do we handle ethical dilemmas where the decision would harm one and not the other, and they're both the least among us? So this is a good one to think about. Again, a lot of world religions have this built into their religious system, and it's a good one in terms of protecting people. It has its problems. Last but not least, individual rights. This is the idea that everyone has the right to safety, self-development or pursuit of happiness, privacy. There's lots of rights that we all believe that we should have. One right that has been questioned and even perhaps downgraded in our society is an individual's right to privacy. I'm guessing many of you in high school were subjected to locker searches or car searches because they were trying to protect other students. So we've given up a lot of our right to privacy in order to win over right to safety. So I like it because it takes into account of individual rights, which we highly value in the United States, but whose rights win? What happens when one person's right to privacy butts up against another person's right to safety? My child was in a high school his freshman year, and there was a shooting in the high school. And frankly, after that, I'm pretty comfortable with the idea that they're going to check lockers or cars, etc., to make sure that there are no weapons in them. So again, one person's right to privacy, another person's right to safety. How do we decide who wins that one? So that was a look at the individual, at the different frameworks. Let me talk about some other things that you might be thinking. If I just said, how do you decide? You're in an ethical dilemma, how do you decide? Somebody might say, I would look at who gets hurt. So what are the different ways people can get hurt? It could be a financial injury, a financial harm. It could be physically. It could be mentally. What if something is divulged that is very embarrassing? Some of the frameworks would actually look at this one. So the rights framework would look at this. The utilitarian approach would look at this in terms of who gets hurt. But as we mentioned, remember, how do we calculate physical damage. And so I certainly would include this one in mine. Who gets hurt if I make the decision one way or the other? Another one that somebody might say is I would ask, is it legal? And obviously this is the government requirements one. Market forces would probably look at this also. But I'm going to say it again. I think this is a minimum standard. This is a good place to start. You're going to see differences in state laws, differences in international laws, but this one is just a really good place to start, not where you probably want to end. So you might include it in your decision-making process. What I want someone to do this to me, it's kind of the golden rule, again, of many religions is do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? So there are definitely some of the frameworks that would include this. Universal law would include it, individual rights would include it, and I think it's a really positive one because it gets you to turn it around and make you think about how would I feel if this was done to me. So this is a good one. How would I feel? You don't really probably find this in any of the frameworks, but I think this is something that some people may downplay. How would I feel if I did something that I internally felt was wrong, that made my stomach a little bit queasy, that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up? So I think this is probably a really good one for many of you. How would I feel if I acted in this way or in another way? These are my favorite. And I think if many companies would follow these, the newspaper rule, they'd avoid a lot of this because they assume that nothing is going to come out. And we all know that many times those lies come out. We find out that Lance Armstrong cheated in terms of drug use. We find out that Enron did a whole lot of things behind the scenes that they did not admit to. So newspaper rule is a good one, and that one basically says is your decision's going to be on the front page of the newspaper tomorrow. I like the grandma or mother rule. How would I explain this to my mother? Would I feel good about the decision if I had to explain it to my mother? So I like this one too. Have you noticed that there's something missing? Well, a common guideline to a lot of us use that is not in this list. What are the chances of getting caught? This should never be a part of your decision-making process for two reasons. One, if you're thinking this way, then you know the answer. Don't do it. And two, people always find out. And I'm going to say that one again. People always find out. So, making your own process. It should be personalized to you. Some of you might include the grandma rule. Some of you might not. Some of you might include how do I feel. Some of you might not. You can combine these personal ones and frameworks. You should consider consequences. And you should always have a final step that involves evaluating the outcome of the decision. So your final step should not be make the decision. Here's an example. I might gather information. This sounds like a great idea, but keep in mind that you will not always have all of the facts. Consider the alternatives. What are the 3 different things I could do? What are the 2 different ways I could handle this? And then personally, I think a good one to say is it legal? Start with that. That might help us make the decision. Who could get hurt in all the different ways? What are the negative ramifications for my company? That's the market forces. I would definitely say, what would my grandmother say? Or what would the newspaper rule say? Or what would my mother say? Finally, make the decision and then evaluate the outcomes. Again, that last one's important. Evaluate the outcomes. How did it turn out? Because that might help you the next time you're faced with an ethical dilemma. So now I'm going to ask you to create your own. Again, make it personal. Be sure to have a final evaluation step. And then you're going to have the next step in this module is to apply it to an ethical dilemma. You're going to be asked to create your own process, 1 through 6, 1 through 7, and then to apply it to one of 3 different ethical dilemmas listed in the assignment. So this is the end of this PowerPoint, and I hope it helps you to understand the process. Please now go to the next step, which is to open the document with the assignment in it and follow the steps. Thank you.